Safety quarterly report from Diane, and I want to acknowledge that this is Diane's last meeting. The lucky Diane is retiring, and she's going to spend more time with the grandchildren and do other things, I'm sure. So all the best to you, and thank you for your work, okay?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Yes, so hard act to follow after the exciting civil defence paper, so I'll do my best. I will take that this quarterly report, October to December, as read, but just like to point out to you that there is a slight development around the trespass notices. The trespass notice for the person who assaulted the staff member has
Page
not...
11. Page 11?
Page 11?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, mine says 9.
That's all right.
Has not yet been issued because the person has been bailed to an Auckland address and the Auckland police have yet to serve it on him, but it is a work in progress and it will be issued. Any questions?
Sorry. I just have a comment. I'm so pleased to see that the senior leadership team has approved free pull access for all council employees. That's a very progressive step. I would like to see this extended to independent members of the committee, but apparently that's not it, is it? Anyway. Or even councillors, exactly, but you can push that. Anyway. So thank you very much, Diane. The report is open for comment or questions. Right? Well, that seems fine. Oh, B, sorry.
Thank you. Just a general question, really, Diane. Thanks for the work that you've put into the space in the workplace. It's really great. At an earlier meeting, there was talk about EAP services being extended to elected members. As an elected member, I haven't heard anything about that. I'd just like to be able to inform my board members about that. Is that already functional, or is that... Yeah, it is. Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is already functional, and I'm pretty sure that it was communicated a while ago through the elected members bulletin or YACO or one of those. Maybe it was just missed, but yes, it is available. All you have to do is identify yourself as a Kapiti Coast District Councillor or elected member and go through the process outlined. Yep.
Right, thank you. Well, look, that's it. Thank you very much, Diane. Thank you again. Okay, and all the best.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you all well.
Oh, yes, I moved that somebody moved the report to be noted. Sorry, I think. Moved by Jocelyn, seconded by David. In favour will say aye, the contrary no. It is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you so much, Diane. Okay. Yanka, it's all yours now. The top 10. Do you want to say anything, Mark, or Ninka, you'll come up and...
I'm just going to pass straight over to Ninka.
Right, okay. Ninka, we're in your hands to tell us anything you want particularly to draw to our attention. I think we're getting used now to this charts and arrows and colours and so on, but anything you want particularly to draw to our attention, and then I'll pass it over for comment or question, right?
Kia ora katoa. I will take the report as read, but in light of the emergency management presentation we had earlier, I want to point your attention to paragraphs 12 and 13 in the report. The first one is to inform you that emergency management has been added to the top 10 and has been included in org number 9, which is about infrastructure and business continuity planning. So emergency management, the risk treatments reflect very much what Roddy talked about, the things we've got on the way to professionalize and upskill and have more people involved. And the second one was in paragraph 13, I've alluded to the fact that yes, all our asset management plans have risk registers in them. There are strategic and operational risks. Risk management is actually a part of business as usual life cycle management for every asset. And especially the lifeline assets, which is water and roading, also do criticality assessments. So they really focus on the criticality of some of our larger assets. And to do those risk assessments, we have done extensive earthquake modeling, for example, for our pipe networks. So using those models, then using our flood model would be another one. So we're in the process of upgrading to a very sophisticated flood model, which will be released later this year. We had a session yesterday. It's very interesting stuff. So that tells asset managers a good amount of information of the physical risks to their assets, and then they plan accordingly for renewals, which may have to be brought forward, or upgrades like you've seen outside of the council here. Bigger pipes deal with bigger water, basically. So we do a lot of risk management already at the national level. There's the national risk assessment that has been done and led by MFE in the past 3 years. It's all based in the climate space, if you wish, climate hazards, which are basically increasing our existing natural hazards. On a Wellington, we're just in the last stages of the Wellington Regional Climate Change Impact Assessment, which is also a climate change risk assessment. So that's being finalised, and we'll report it back shortly to council as well.
Thank you, Ninka. That's a very pertinent comment, and it just leads me to suggest that I don't think we know very much about asset management plans, and maybe it would be a good idea to see one at a future meeting. And when we think about this, we always think about water for some reason, but I mean, that is a key one. So what about the idea of having at a future meeting a discussion on the asset management plan for water and see what's in it, so we get some feel for some of the things that you just described in some more detail, that's all. What do you feel? Should we have a look at one? Yeah, that'd be great. All right, so you and whoever is appropriate in the water area would come and make a presentation at a future meeting on the asset management plan for the water sector, all right?
Yes, and there is a connection with the audit discussion as well, as Mark will probably allude to. The EY audit is also on waters.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to suggest that the water asset management plan is being audited as part of the long-term plan.
Yes.
So when we bring the long-term plan stuff, I would
Right.
suggest that's a good forum to have for you to have a look at the asset management plan as well.
All right, cool. Everybody understands water, I think, or thinks they do. Right, so there we are. Okay, many thanks. Okay, the floor is open for questions or comments. Jocelyn, are you going to be, your hand is poised? Oh, Bernie's first, then Jocelyn.
Yeah, so very pleased to see that the cyber security threat has made its way into the top 10. I think it's maybe the first time, looking back on past agendas, and we have Dave to thank for that. And I thought it was understood that we would have a regular mention in the public excluded whether there were cyber security threats or not, but I can't remember. But I know this was raised by Dave.
Could somebody just answer that quickly for Bernie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a report in terms of compliance. There is a report in the agenda which says there hasn't been any cyber security threats for the reporting period. Thanks, Bernie.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
Yes, thank you through the chair. So thank you, Ninka, for your comments. And just relating to water, I think it would be also really interesting to know how the process works when, particularly, someone's mentioned about increasing the size of pipes, the process you need to go through in terms of resourcing consent through GW to get that to occur, and whether that's actually an easy process or whether it's not. And I think they potentially are looking at it from a different perspective.
But also whether they add value too, whether they're talking from the same song sheet as we are, right? Yeah. Absolutely, thank you.
Okay.
I think that point is noted, okay. Now, Liz is next online, then David, then Orifia, right? Liz, you're on.
I'm on, right. Okay, so I have some questions around maintaining social license. Is that relevant? Can I ask that at this stage?
Absolutely, yes.
So I still have some really major concerns about how we're communicating around key controversial issues within our community. And there's one coming up in a couple of months' time, which is around the Takatai Kapiti project. And I'm just a little bit concerned. We have, out of the blue came this organisation called Kapiti Calm, which is causing mayhem around the place. I just think we're not keeping track enough of these little hotspots that are occurring in our community around some of these controversial issues. And I mean, we had a mini one around road names for State Highway 1, which I was in the centre of. Um, how closely are we monitoring these and monitoring things that are cropping up on social media and other platforms, and how are we monitoring our response to these kind of things? So that's my first question. The second one is around the iwi relationships, and we are, and I note in the report that we're saying we're heavily understaffed in that area. We're also way behind in terms of reviewing our partnership agreement with iwi. I know also there was an incident around the culture and creativity strategy where we used consultants who did not engage adequately with mana whenua prior to doing a draft of that strategy. So, yeah, I'm just a little bit concerned that some things are perhaps not being brought to the surface for discussion that are quite important. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Those are important ones. I think I might ask a response to that now, if that's convenient. Right? Okay, right about here.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So just in terms of, I'll start with all two, failure to adequately maintain social licence. So our comms and engagement team are regularly scanning and searching all the social media channels, and certainly do raise it with the senior leadership team. As well as the activity managers that deal with the subject that's being raised. So I mean, these things do escalate, and they do settle down. So there is a regular monitoring and observation channel or service that is being done by the comms and engagement team. Just in terms of the org, so we must be careful to distinguish between a risk and an issue. An issue has already happened. So when these groups are established and are putting messaging on social media channels, that's already happened. That's an issue. So this is the risk of not maintaining the social licence. And as the report says, we aren't yet near the target risk. We are trying to get there. And there's a number of risk treatments, and those risk treatments should be read and perceived as that's the work effort that staff are currently doing to get us to the target risk. And there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in that space. There's a lot of deadlines that are June 2024, and staff will continue to work through those risk assessments and continue to work towards the target risk level. So it's not an easy space. It's not an easy space to get right. So that's why there's a large number of work-ons in that space. But there is that regular monitoring function. In terms of Org 3, again, yes, we've had some issues. There's some things that have happened. And we do need to address those. There is, again, if I look at Org 3, if I look at page 29 of the agenda, there certainly are work streams in place to get us to the target risk level. As you can see, the current risk level is nowhere near where we want to get to. So there are a number of risk treatments that are still they're in train. So what would be helpful is happy to work with the committee, happy to take it offline. But if there's some risk treatments that you're concerned about the progress, or you're concerned about some risk treatments that aren't there, because those risk treatments are work effort that is going into putting in more controls to mitigate the risk. Then we can have that discussion. There's not too many risk treatments. With this one, the senior leadership team will be having a look at all the risk treatments in a couple of weeks' time. We once a year we have a really deep dive into the risk treatments, and we ask the questions: Are we progressing? Are we on track? Are they going to relate controls? And are those controls going to be effective? So these are two spaces that there is work effort. But it is taking time to get to the target risk level, and as you can see, we're a fair way off.
Can I just come back to the Org 2 one? Because we did put in place a comms protocol, which has not really been sort of widely circular. It's not normally sort of top of mind when we do council meetings. But one of the things we talked about was, for example, when there is something discussed at a council meeting or any kind of, it could be even an open briefing, where it's likely to be controversial, that we have a member of the comms team there and that we agree on the messaging around those issues. Because, what's been happening sometimes is we get newspaper reporters dialing into open meetings and all of a sudden, things are out there in the domain before we've had a chance to even think about what we're putting out to the media. So to me, there's still a lot of room there to be much more proactive on our comms, to be thinking ahead, at every meeting we go to. Is there anything on the agenda here that's likely to be controversial in the public domain? And how do we deal with that before it becomes an issue? So I guess that's my plea there. And I guess in terms of the iwi relationships, it's just about more resourcing. But, we are working on that, as you say.
Yeah, look, I think you're coming later on, David, but you've raised that point that's just been made many times about being proactively prepared for to respond to particular events. Yeah. Anyway, that's fine. Thank you. Next is, it's you, David.
Thank you.
It is you, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I have one specific point, one general. The specific one relates to Orgs 2 and 3, and we are saying that failure to maintain social licence has a moderate consequence, but failure to give effect to treaty and our obligations to Māori has a major consequence. And either they're the wrong way around or they should be the same. I don't see how you could have a lesser consequence for loss of your social licence when the relationship with iwi and giving effect to the treaty is part of your social licence, really. So I think they should, whatever they are, however you want to rate them, I think you should rate them the same or reverse that. And I suspect it's been influenced by the fact that the likelihood has been adjusted rather than the ratings. The other thing is a more general one about these the controls that we're seeing, and we're being sort of I think we're not getting the right information here. Every performance is either green or not applicable. Nothing's either orange or red. Apparently that's part of the software. Anything that's ongoing has a 0% even though it's got an end date. So ongoing and end date are self-contradictory, but the system doesn't allow you to do anything about that. And a whole lot of them have got noughts and apparent end dates of June, which means a hell of a lot of work's going to be done in a short time. A lot of others have 55%, which means that we're halfway through the year, not that they're halfway through the work. So I've asked, and I hope it can happen, that those last three be treated literally with a grain of salt. And I'd rather not be misled. I'd rather not have the information than have wonky information. But what really matters is the progress comments. And for my part, I'd chop the last three off because they just mislead me and give me more about the progress. Tell me what you're doing, what you would like to do but you can't do, not just what you have done, but if only we had this, we could do that. That's more useful to me than crazy zeros, green lights, because you can't have anything but green. It's a jammed traffic light. And percentages that are just worked off a calendar.
Do you want to respond to that now, or could that come up? Do you want to look at it? Right.
We can respond now.
No, whatever. If you feel you can do so now, please do so. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Look, thank you for the comment. So we certainly this was raised by David just a couple of days ago, and we've taken the action. What we highlighted to David is look, there is some limitations to the software, the CAM software that produces these reports. If you, for example, not to go into great detail, so we've taken the action to go away and have a look at it. We've certainly taken the point. We do want to be able to report to you clearly and accurately and succinctly how we are tracking on the risk treatments, because that's the work that's underway to establish the controls to get us to the target risk level. And that's where your focus needs to be. Are we on track? Are we going to get to where we need to go? So it's an absolutely valid point. In terms of misleading you, it's certainly not our intention
No,
to
it's not
mislead
you.
you. It is the
the
limitation
system,
of the
yeah.
software, and we have a 0. It depends on if you rank a risk treatment as ongoing, then there's a limitation of the software. It just does it as 0%. So it looks like we haven't actually done any work, but actually, in actual fact, we have. So it is still early days for us with this CAM software. It is a new provider, and we're working through. And I think with each month that goes by, we get better and better. So, but we've certainly taken on the point. We agreed with everything that David raised at our meeting, and the team will be looking at, can we work with the software provider? Can we change it, or do we simply eliminate the 3 fields? But we will find a way where we can detail for you what is the risk treatment, how are we progressing, are we on track, are we not, do we need to raise any issues with you? That's the desired state that we were trying to get with this reporting. So fair comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much there. Riffy, now your call.
Kia ora.
And then comes Glenn, and then comes Lawrence.
Kia ora. Thank you, David. Through you. I've got a couple of things. Thanks to Liz for raising Org 3. I just really want to understand that there's the iwi are being as responsive as necessary in their part to ensure that they're not contributing to this risk and its levels. So I would like to know that at this forum you feel you could say whether there was some need for more responsiveness from the iwi, because I can feed that back to them. I don't agree with swapping Org 2 and 3. I think that whilst everything's threaded together and they match, I think each org has its own risk. I agree with raising Org 2. I think that it doesn't show a future risk level, and I think that what we need to understand is that is a very high priority. So I don't think it necessarily ranks discussing whether Org 3 and Org 2 should swap. I think they, within each, they have their pieces of work, and so each needs to be relatively represented as to that risk. Because our job is about mitigating risk in each of those top 10. So, question though, out of interest, Org 7, we've got cyber threats in there. And I just wondered how we assess our systems.
So thank you. Our assessment is done independently. So we actually have an external cybersecurity consultancy practice that comes in and does a full audit. So we have that done once a year. And they also, when they do the audit, they do our testing, they do infiltration testing, and then they leave us with a similar to Ernst & Young. They leave us with findings and corrective measures and how that's rated. So it is subject to an external review.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. I wanted to also just know what our insurance and liability against cyber is.
So we do carry cover for cybersecurity. In terms of the limits, it is. I'm happy to disclose it outside of the public the domain, but we do carry cybersecurity insurance.
Okay. All right. I'm really pleased, and I'm really pleased to see EMS included in this. So thank you very much for the report. I find it very helpful.
Yeah, it's just a follow-on question from Liz actually in relation to Org 2, social licence, which you could transpose that into trust and confidence, I guess, as well, which is goes hand in hand. So I understand what you're saying, Mark, about issue and risk. I'd just like to understand the process. So if I use a local example, And if you could try and translate how that process would look like, that would help me greatly. So in the public domain at the moment, we've got Tuatara Brewery leaving Kapiti, and what's circulating, whether it's correct or not, I don't know, is that they're leaving because council have been so difficult in issuing a resource consent for 10 years, that's been one of the factors for them to move. Now, whether it's true or not, it's actually beside the point. Well, it might not be beside the point, but it's circulating in the public. So the issue is, that's the issue. The risk is that goes across businesses who are looking to come to Kapiti. It goes to trust and confidence in our compliance space, who would want to come here if that's the way council are treating a pretty substantial business. So what would the process look like in that space? Is it, so the comms obviously know about it because they're monitoring social media. Is there a process to elevate that, or is that held within comms and they, another example would be Calm at the Paikokiri Community Board meeting. It's wildly circulating that they were treated pretty badly. Again, whether I wasn't there, whether they were or not, it's circulating. So what's the process for that? And is there, what does it look like? And yeah.
You say your bit, then I'm going to chime in with something, because those are little issues from my perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So look, just in terms of the process, so when there's a live issue, the process that we currently have in place is that the team will deal to the issue at hand. So there will be this, as I said, the scanning and the monitoring of the social media. It'll be elevated to Darren, our Chief Executive, and where necessary, if it's deemed necessary, there will be a briefing and it'll be elevated to the councillors, and it'll be discussed. The comms and engagement team will issue media releases or media statements, and so they will be prepared in advance. So that's how a live issue is contained as much as possible, and there's lots of communication with yourselves. In terms of how does that then translate into the risk register and the rating and the ranking and the risk treatment? So we, at the moment, we would need a significant event to have a look at that in terms of the risk. If it was significant, our process would be assess the current perception of risk, reassess the target level. Is there a control that we've got in place that has failed? If it's failed, how has it failed? Let's go and do an internal audit of those controls. Are the risk treatments that we've currently got in place actually going to deliver on mitigating the risk to the desired level? When they are small events, it doesn't necessarily trigger a review, but the process is one will follow the other. Our other process is that when we present this risk register to you, Ninka has gone and met individually with all of the members of the senior leadership team and asked those exact questions. Has anything happened in the reporting period where we need to elevate the risk level? Are the risk treatments still valid? Are you happy with the target risk level? So what we're bringing back to you is the current state of play and our current assessment, and where there's been a change, the report will highlight the changes.
So you wouldn't expect that to bounce around very much, because is it death by 1,000 cuts? Lots of little issues actually affect social licence?
Yeah,
or no? Is that
it really just depends. We would go back, in the first instance, we'd go back to our risk matrix.
Yep, thank you.
Did you want to make a comment, Darren?
Thank you. You closed it off quite nicely at the end there, actually, Glenn, with the death by 1,000 cuts or dealing with big issues. So if I think about, for my mind, what is failure to adequately maintain social licence, I'd look at water services failing, you know, from an organisational perspective, as opposed to a group of people turning up at a public meeting who felt that they weren't fairly treated. You know, so I think about the size of what we are considering in the risk for the organisation as a whole, and really happy to talk to you about Tuatara, because we've got a really good email from Tuatara that actually explains why they are leaving, and it is in line with the media release that's been put out there. But you look, we all have our views, and we're all entitled to opinions, which is what makes living in New Zealand part of the draw to live here, right? As opposed to being censured and sanctions. So we are mindful of the information that goes out into the public arena, even though the organisation itself has come out and fronted why they are moving. You know, they closed one of their premises in Wellington itself. They made comment of other craft breweries who have recently closed because of the economic climates, and the fact that they are building a fit-for-purpose brewery in Brewtown in the Hut, and will be in that community. It's difficult when you're by yourself, you know, and things have changed. So I think about the draw that Brewtown gets, and it really is the precinct now, other than that central Wellington CBD for that kind of craft type brewing. Now that doesn't mean that we're not bitterly disappointed, but if I step you through everything that we have done as an organisation to wrap support around that organisation, it's pretty impressive. But just coming back to the point, I think Mark has answered the question really well, but for me it's about that organisational risk and what that does with our social licence.
Thank you. Mine's a bit of a follow-on from David's in regards to the last three things on there. I'd really like to get some clarity around how those three relate to each other. They just don't seem to. And I think that's probably what David is I'll give you an example, is raising. In Org 1s, this is on page 24, we have a red under the first risk treatment, yet it continues to be in progress and 55% completed, yet it's red. And there's nothing in the progress comment that says why it's red. So for red for me means we are not going to do that is not going to succeed. It's falling over. We've got a major issue with that particular risk treatment, yet there's nothing in the other bits that explain why it's red. And I would go down to the amber ones that are later on, and I think it's Org 5, I think it is, the same thing. And the other thing I don't understand is, what does not applicable mean in the performance measure? So, because if it's not applicable, then why is it in there as a current risk treatment? That would be my question. So I guess for me, I love where this is heading. I just have a lot of questions about its relatability, and for me to get the information I need to know that with confidence that we're actually measuring this appropriately, reporting on it appropriately, and we're getting the information back here to say, actually, you know, if there's a red, like for me, if there's a red, there should be an explanation as to why it's red. Are we doing anything about that red, or is that just going to be in the too hard basket and it'll just sit there until whatever, you know? So that's, I guess, my comment / question, which probably relates to David's comment as well around those last measures and their suitability for us in terms of the information we need.
Yes, I have, thank you. Through the chair, so I've got a couple of questions relating to two of the orgs. So the first one is number 4, inadequate mitigation and adaptation responses to known and future climate change challenges. So this is on page 32. Under the causes, it lists quite a few points there. And I suppose I'm just tying up some other things that have been discussed at this meeting today in relation to, I suppose, emergency management and where our, whether our risks have been identified. And from what I gather, there is some informal stuff around, information around there, but it's not actually documented. And so I would have thought that this is something that would have been actually included in that list there, and also is one of the action points that needs to be in this list as well.
A response required?
Yes, I can respond to that. Yes, tying back to emergency management, land use planning is one of our biggest tools we have in our toolbox as a council to go for that reduction of things happening, which is what James also alluded to say don't build in flood-prone areas, that kind of thinking. So where it's actually formalized is in our district plan. Our district plan takes a risk-based approach and does zone and say this is a ponding area, this is a flood area. So those risks are already in our district plan and will get more sophisticated if we have the opportunity to update our district plans, which is all planned for the next couple of years. We'll do upgrades following our new flood model as well. So it's tied into our flood model that tells you about the hazard. So it's formalized in that system, formalized in our district plan. And then the national risk assessment and the regional risk assessments are other formalizations of those risks.
Mm. So thank you for that. So I understand all that, but I suppose to me a risk assessment, a risk register is saying that a stormwater system or all stormwater systems are problematic if they're not maintained adequately. And obviously some will be better maintained than others. And so it's actually identifying these individual areas that actually, if they're not addressed, cause a lot of problems. And so, and I think also it talks about somewhere along, one of the points it does talk about doing one of the activities, but it's a case, actually I think it was in the stormwater about doing stuff out to 2041. But if you actually don't know what those individual ones are, and maybe council staff do, but we don't, if you actually don't know what they are, how do you actually know the program and the money is being spent in the right place?
Look, I might try. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I might try and respond. So, so thank you for your comments. There certainly are. This is the top 10. So this is what this report does detail is the top 10 risks for the council. Beneath that, in stormwater and water and wastewater and infrastructure and corporate services and regulatory. We have further risk registers which would provide that detail and how we. So what effectively what we as an organisation are doing is what's called enterprise risk management. So it's making sure that all facets of the business are actually managing risk. They're assessing risk, and so beneath this layer is a number of different risk registers, which then will aggregate up to this. So some of your questioning is actually detailed in different risk registers. It's not the intention to bring to this committee the 300 risk registers that exist in the organisation, but it is our hope that when you read this, that you are getting the assurance that the top 10 is covering, the top 10 risks.
So I suppose I use that as one example, but if you look on page 33, it is actually covered in here under the point of infrastructure resilience projects delivery. And so there must be, so it's a case of where there must be, obviously, some risk analysis has been done to identify the key areas.
I would like to move us on,
Yeah,
but I'd like
thank
to
you.
make a quick comment. I mean, to me, if I were looking at an asset management plan, I would like to see that provide for regular inspection, so you know actually what's there and what it looks like. What should it look like given its age? Based on engineering standards, when should it be replaced? And you can replace things which may well be in perfectly good condition. Look at aircraft, for example. They're replaced and stripped back all the time. And the same thing can apply with a lesser degree in other assets. I'd need good engineering standards about how long something should last, and I would need to know what amount is allocated for regular maintenance of small things, as well as replacement. So that's what I'd look for. Anyway, look, I mean, this has been a good discussion, and I'm sure that Mark and Inka can take these comments, particularly from you, Jocelyn, and from Lawrence. No, and Lawrence too, because they've been quite significant. And David, detailed comments. You'll look at that, right? Absolutely. You'll look at that. Yeah, absolutely. Those points are well made. So look, I want to move on, and I will therefore move that the report, the Risk and Insurance Committee receives and notes this report, including Appendix 1 to this report. I will move if somebody will second. Somebody? Thank you, Lawrence. Favour, aye, contrary, carried, right? Got to move on. All those in favour will say aye. All those who are not in favour will say no, it is carried. Okay. Now look, just looking ahead, colleagues, the Mayor has to leave us at 12:15. I understand councillors have something at 12:45, is that right? So I'm aiming to finish a bit before 12:45 if that's convenient, all right? I'm not trying to rush you, but so now, whatever. So the quarterly Treasury compliance, you're going to report that, Mark?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take the report as read. It is self-explanatory. There's no compliance issues with our Treasury management for the reporting period for the committee to note or be concerned about. Just by way of an update, that's not in the paper, is our Treasury advisors, Bancorp. We are working together. We are having a look at our Treasury management policy. The Treasury management policy has not been reviewed for 3+ years. And so we're working through the robustness of our current policy. Do things need to change? And we're working through that. It's timely to do it now because it does connect to the financial strategy, which is one of the founding documents of the long-term plan. So the intention would be to obviously, well, the idea is ideally council would need to adopt a new Treasury management policy before the long-term plan, or could adopt the Treasury management policy as part of the long-term plan documents. But certainly our intention is to seek council approval of the Treasury management policy or any changes to that. It is in its regular refresh review date anyway. So that process is well underway. The intention would be to take that. That is not in the delegation of the Risk and Assurance Committee. It is in the delegation of the Council to adopt a refreshed policy. The intention would be to have a representative from Bancorp to explain to Council laws what's changing and why. And there would be an intention to report that back to this committee and to have a Bancorp representative talk to yourselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Are there any questions or comments? I just say that I think that this is one of the strong areas of council performance, which is our Treasury management, and long may it continue, but we must be up to date, and you well made the point that we need to review what we're doing. But we do get this assurance every meeting from our excellent Chief Financial Officer that things are in accordance with the policy. All right? So are there any comments or questions? In that case, I will move that the Risk and Assurance Committee notes the Council's full compliance with the Treasury management policy for the 3 months ended 31 December 2023. Who would like to second that? Lawrence, thank you. All those in favour will please say aye. All those against may say no. It is carried. Thank you. Well, Sharon, we've got a bit of presentation for you now. 4 items, all right? We're in your hands. First of all, update on audit control findings.
Thank you and good morning, almost good afternoon. Just as an intro, yes, there are 4 papers, 8.4 through to 8.7, which you can obviously see are themed, and we'll take each of them as read, but we do need to look at them individually. 8.4, a progress on where we are with considerations and response to the findings that Ernst & Young reported to you late last year at the end of their audit. They adopt our annual report and then they give you the results. And we noted at that time it was pleasing to have so few findings coming through, and I'm pleased to say that there is action underway on all of the requirements that they have found.
That's fine. I mean, as you say, there's 3 items there. It's going to take a little while to progress 2 of them for good reasons. And I understand that the overhead rate one, the final one, that the auditors are quite satisfied with the progress that's been made. So look, I think it's just a matter of noting at this stage, unless there's any particular questions. And assuming there are none, I will move, if I can just find the damn thing. Where is it?
Page 66, paragraph 8.
There we are. That the Risk and Assurance Committee notes the progress update regarding Ernst & Young's report on control findings for the year ended 30th June 2023 as attached as Appendix 1 to this report, and notes that Ernst & Young will reassess these as part of their audit for the year end 30th June 2024. So they come back and address these anyway, and some of these do, for various good reasons, take time to resolve. Right? So I moved that, didn't I? No, somebody else. It's time somebody else moved something. Come on. Arifia, you're going to move that, aren't you? You're moving that one? And David is seconding it. All those will say aye, the contrary will no, the ayes have it. Righto. Now, Sharon, we're on the internal audit work program.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The content of this report summarises where we got through last year, and it's not a surprise to you. We took you last year through the deep dives we ended up doing in auditing the mitigation of fraud policy and the procurement policy and associated framework. That in tune delayed us completing in the calendar year progress on the other 3 that had been scheduled, but I can tell you that work is now well underway. That being the Code of Conduct, General Expenses and Receipt of Gifts and Hospitality. With regards to the Protected Disclosures Policy, we discussed that with the Chair and the other independent member earlier this week. That review was delayed due to resourcing of the 2 bigger audits, but also noting that we had recently just updated and put in a new policy in accordance with the amended legislation for that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. I just simply note that the 2 big ones, fraud policy and procurement policies, are big ticket items as far as I'm concerned. So it's pleasing to see that they have in fact been completed. All right. Are there any questions or comments? In that case, Jocelyn, I will ask you to move this. All right. You are moving. You know what you mean, of course. That that the Risk and Assurance Committee receives and notes the internal audit progress update on the work program for 23-24, moved by Jocelyn and seconded by Glenn, right? All those in favour will say aye, those who may be against will say no, and the ayes have it. Righto, Sharon, now the internal audit outcomes report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, last year you did get some commentary about how these audits ran. This paper provides you with a high-level summary of the observations for the fraud one at paragraph 6 and procurement at paragraph 8. The only slight amendment to my presentation in this paper I will give you is at the top of page 84. We didn't internally audit the procurement framework as such. We audited the controls within it around staff compliance with procurement policy and framework. There is a distinction there. And we are progressing well with, particularly in the procurement space, there's a new procurement team of 2 who are fully invested in making the arrangements to make things simple. There was nothing wrong with the legality of the requirement, meeting the requirements in that policy. It was about simplifying the framework for ease of presentation, and with that becomes better understanding of those obligations by staff. Thank you.
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment that I made at our briefing session, that from my experience, procurement frameworks and controls can get very complex and perhaps unnecessarily complex. And from my experience, we need to think not just about the ability of staff to manage this, but the ability of suppliers to handle this as well. And in fact, the ability of suppliers to be willing to contract, not having to face a huge paper chase and consider it not value for money on their part to actually bid, which reduces the competitiveness of the whole market process. So this is a very important area, and international experience is full of examples of procurement regimes which can add substantially to the cost of procurement when the controls that are there may not be value added. That's what I'm saying. That's just one of a hobby horse that I have, and I made that point in the briefing we had, and I make it again. We need to think about the suppliers as well as our own staff, right? Yeah. Well, is there no one's got? Oh, Jocelyn, sorry,
Yes.
you want to say?
Yeah, so through the chair, so thank you, Sharon, for highlighting about this procurement framework. So I'm just wondering if you could give us a brief summary of the difference between, I suppose what the difference is between the framework and the controls, please, so that we can understand that. Well, I can understand that. Thank you.
I'll start and my group manager will support me. The framework is essentially the bundle of requirements that we've put in as best practice to manage procurement and staff adherence to best practice and the way we actually apply the best practice and what we do internally here to comply. The controls are essentially, I'd equate it perhaps to your standing orders. It's the key elements of any document within that framework, which is what you might call a control gate. You must adhere to that in order to be achieving best practice for whatever that point relates to. We have a protocol in this room. We speak through the chair as staff, and we're orderly, etc. It's as simple as that. Okay. There are things that make sure that the policy is applied consistently and appropriately, and the policies sit within one framework.
I think there are some actually quite well-developed international standards of good practice in procurement. And if they talk about a framework, they would, in some cases, will talk about things like, first of all, the objective is value for money in our purchasing. Secondly, the objective is transparency. Thirdly, it's probity or whatever. And you can weight those or rank them differently if you wish, but these are the things which should underlie the rules that you're putting forward, the processes that you're putting forward. That's just my view.
So then, I suppose the key to this then, with these controls, is ensuring that they're being monitored so that they are being followed.
Indeed.
Correct. And
which is it through an auditing process, or is it done through something that's less formal?
It's an add-on to our primary audit. We will now watch how staff take on our findings. It's very similar to what we do with EY. We must we accept the findings, we consider them, we look for improvements and points of failure and look to change those out, or if we can't, some treatments to make sure that they're at a tolerable level. And my team are watching over how this is put through by the specialist staff, and then it'll be evidentially based. We will not close off monitoring until we're sure that it is completed to satisfaction.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I will move that the Risk and Insurance Committee receives and notes the internal audit 2023 outcomes report. I would like Lawrence to second that, right? All those in favour will say aye. The contrary will say no. The ayes have it. Okay. Right. Sharon, we're nearly there. The internal audit work program for 2024. Please just.
Thank you. This
Tell us.
is the end of my omnibus of internal audit. Two facets to note. First of all, on 6.2 on page 85, made a business decision to better align our internal audit work program with corporate planning and reporting. To that end, this program is only through to 30 June. This is the best time to do it with the adoption of an LTP from 1 July. So we've given you a work program through to that. The other reason alluded to in the other papers is we have the carryovers of audits to complete.
Yes.
And just to your point, Councillor Pravanov, on the previous item, you will see that through to 30 June, we do plan to go and retest elements of the mitigation of fraud policy. As the Chair alluded to, big ticket items, you don't take your eye off them. We're leaving the procurement policy framework aside at this point, given the extra resourcing that the CE and GM have put into that space and the proof that they are making good progress and it's in good hands. The mitigation of fraud one, we will stay over that for the time being. And just one small correction, the note in the white row that says Org 3, it should say Org 8 with the appropriate definition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Okay, questions or comments? Yes, Jocelyn?
Thank you. Through the chair, and I'm not sure whether this is what staff are doing. I know at some point in the conversations around this council table for this committee, there has been some comments or I think there's been a recommendation to audit the regulatory processes that we do, the consenting side of things, and I'm not sure whether I've got that right or not, and if I have, is that further down the line or has that come to us some other way?
Auditing the consenting process in terms of timeliness or
Well, I suppose it's
or whatever reporting about compliance.
it's auditing, I suppose, the process, the monitoring, compliance.
Sorry, Darren, do you want to comment? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Are you suggesting there's a resolution asking staff to go away and do that?
I suppose my question is whether or not it is somewhere on our agenda, and if it's not, maybe yes, I am suggesting that. Thank you.
Yep. It's not normal practice for us to audit the regulatory process. We are required to report to MFE in relation to statutory requirements. Recently, we were audited by MB in the building space, and they classified us as low risk in meeting compliance with legislative requirements, and are coming back to see us in 2 years. So I guess if you think about is there risk in the regulatory space, I would say no from a legislative lens, in that we are meeting the central government's requirements. Can't go any higher than that. If there's a concern around the council table about our practices or processes or flaws perhaps with the internal or the external audit process from central government, happy to discuss that, but I certainly don't have any intentions to audit the regulatory process.
Maybe we can have an offline conversation. Thank you.
The Mayor wants to make a comment. Janet, please do so.
Yeah, thank you. I'm wondering if Councillor Pravanov is referring to our regulatory improvement program and I do think it's probably best to take this offline and get some further information from Mr. Jefferson around this before we take any further action today in the committee, and maybe we can come back next time with some information around that.
Thank you.
We'll minute that.
Thank you, Janet. Obviously you sit on a number of committees, and maybe it's in another one, but I just wanted to raise it, seeing we're now looking at the audit program. Thank you. And take it offline.
All right. Well, I will now move that the Risk and Assurance Committee approves the 2024 internal audit work program to 30 June 24 as set out in Appendix 1. I will move, seconded by Lawrence. All those in favour will say aye, against will say no. The ayes have it. Well, thank you very much, Sharon. Right. Sarah, you'll join us, won't you, to talk about legislative compliance. We're in your hands, Sharon. Sharon. Sarah, as to what you want to draw our attention to, and then I'll throw it over for discussion.
Yep. Thank you. Tēnā koutou. So look, this report is reports on our legislative non-compliance for the second quarter of the financial year, so October to December. I will largely I'll take the report as read, and I'm happy to respond to any particular questions that you might have regarding any of the breaches. I will note that two of the issues we have reported via our litigation and external investigations report, that appendices will be released to the public following the meeting. The purpose of that is to provide the opportunity for a discussion in public excluded, given the confidential nature of those two issues. So happy to take questions.
I don't feel there's anything in the non-compliant in the breaches which is going to come and bite us, but up to anybody else to respond. Right. All right. We'll take that as. Oh yes, Bernard, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's about the releasing the information to the public, Sarah, and it's also related to the minutes, confirmation of minutes, where some items are public excluded are released to the public, right?
Yes.
The public, where would they find that information?
It's on our website. I'm happy to circulate a link after this meeting.
You're referring to the public excluded website. Items released from public excluded, right? So I've checked that, and the only thing I can find is the chief executive's new salary. There is nothing about this and the previous minutes. Any of that has been uplifted on that website.
I'll check that point, and if that's correct, we'll certainly take actions to make sure it's all up there. The intention has been that it's up on the website, but I can't tell you what the exact page is.
Well, I checked on the public items released from public excluded.
Okay. Yep. Well, that's a good point, and I will check, and we'll come back to you to confirm.
I think we do handle this very carefully, so we should check that. Absolutely. Well, in that case, somebody should move that the Risk Insurance Committee notes the legislative non-compliance for the second quarter of the financial year from 1 October 23 to 31 December 23, and secondly notes that two legislative non-compliance matters have been transferred to litigation and external investigations, public excluded, for discussion. Who would like to move that? Thank you very much, Lawrence. David will second it. All those in favour will say aye, contrary no. It is carried. Thank you very much there, Sarah. So we go to the now. I'm drowning in pages here. The forward work program. Right, we do have a forward work program, and we will do it. Well, the one is suggested here. Okay, if we look at the chart on page, what's my page? 122. 122, exactly. There may be a few changes here. We're going to bring in emergency management, not necessarily on those dates, but we will discuss with them what the dates should be.
Yes.
All right. We've got an insurance review which has been postponed a little bit, but that's coming. That's now ready to. Will be ready to come forward at our next meeting in May. We've got the usual big meeting in October, looking at the draft annual report and the auditor's report thereon. Apart from that, the 3 independent members will be attending various of the meetings of the council on the LTP and making such suggestions and inputs as may be valuable. Right? So anything else you want to draw to our attention, Mark, that we should particularly note? I think we've already had the dates sent out to us to put in our calendars. But anyway, this is a standard procedure that we follow. The only thing that's changing is adding our emergency response updates, which I think will prove to be a matter of continuing interest. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further comment from me.
In that case, we will move that the Risk and Assurance Committee approves its forward work program for the 2024 calendar year as set out in Appendix 1. Glenn, it's your turn to move something, if you would be willing to do so. Thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Moved by Glenn, seconded by David. All right? Jocelyn. No. It's a very nice name too, yes. It's a nice name. So it's seconded by David. All right. All those in favour will say aye. The contrary will say no. That is carried. Phew, we're getting there. Next item is the confirmation of the minutes, the unconfirmed minutes of the last meeting, which have been circulated. If there are no comments, I will move that the minutes of the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting on the 9th of November be accepted as true and correct record. I move that from the chair. It will be seconded by Lawrence again. All those in favour may say aye, and the contrary will say no. The ayes have it. All right. Now, where do we go here on the publicly excluded minutes?
Yeah, you move that resolution.
I move this resolution, but yes, we're going into. Where's the wording of that resolution?
On the last page of your white agenda. So it's all
Pursuant. Okay.
reasons.
Well, look, I'm not going to read it all. I can if you like, but I will move the public excluded resolution as set out on page 130. All right, is that enough? And this will be moved by Orivia and will be seconded by me. All right? Okay, so we will move into committee. Sorry?
We'll just make sure we've turned the live streaming on.
Yes?